Welcome back to my channel. I am the Crochet Hermit, and in this video we are making a button-down crochet cardigan. I am making a size medium, but I will show you how to alter the pattern to fit any size that you desire. Like and subscribe to support this channel, and click the notification button to be notified when new videos are released. If you are following your own measurements, I put a chart together to show you what you need to measure. We are starting off with the back panel. You're going to need to know the width, length, shoulder, and neck measurements. We are going to begin with the ribbon, which is this bottom portion of the back panel. Grab your yarn and make a slip knot. We are going to be chaining a total of 7 chains. This is the height of the ribbon, and this is roughly around 1.5 inches. I have finished my chains, and now I'm going to take my work and flip it over to the back because we want the bumps to be facing up. Today we are working in the back bumps. Insert your hook into the second bump from the hook and work a single crochet. We are going to continue to work single crochets in the back bumps for the rest of this row. This is what row 1 looks like when you are finished, and you should have a total of 6 single crochets. Chain 1 and turn your work. For the rest of these rows, we're going to be working in the back loop only, and I'm showing you with my needle what the back loop is. This is where you will insert your crochet hook. Insert your hook into the back loop. We are going to be working back loop single crochets for the rest of this row. This is what it looks like after you completed row 2. And now you're going to chain 1 and turn your work. Now for row 3, we're just going to repeat row 2. So we're just working single crochets, back loops only for the rest of the row. Make sure that you are chaining 1 in between your rows. And this is what row 3 looks like when it's complete. You're going to continue working rows of single crochet back loops only until you have a total of 58 rows. This is the width of your top. If you want your top to be wider, please work more rows. I have completed my 58 rows in my ribbon. And now we're going to get started on the length of the top. We are going to be placing half double crochets into each row in the ribbon. This right here is the first row in the ribbon. At the very top of that, where I'm sticking this needle, we are going to be placing a half double crochet. And now I'm going to grab my hook and place a half double crochet at the top of that first row. And this is what that should look like. The half double crochet should be sitting right at the top of that first row. Inside the next row, which is the second row, I'm going to place a half double crochet at the very top. The second crochet is sitting at the top of the second row. Inside the next row, which is the third row in the ribbon, we're going to be placing a half double crochet at the very top. Continue working half double crochets at the top of each row inside of your ribbon. You should have a total of 58 half double crochets when you are finished with your first row. If you are following your own measurements, make sure that the number of half double crochets match the number of rows that you have in your ribbon. For row 2, inside that very first stitch, I'm going to place a half double crochet. I'm going to grab my stitch marker and place it right underneath that first stitch. The stitch marker represents row 1. We are going to continue working half double crochets for the rest of this row. I have made it to the end of the row. Now I'm going to chain 1 and turn my work. For row 3, you're going to repeat row 2 by working half double crochets for the rest of the row. Just a reminder that stitch marker is there to help you identify the first row. Continue working rows of half double crochet until you have a total of 37 rows. If you want your top to be longer, please work more rows. And now we're going to start working on our shoulder in the upper right hand corner. Grab your stitch marker and place it into the 18th stitch. This is the width of my shoulders, which is 5.5 inches. If you are following your own measurements, place the stitch marker at whatever width your shoulder is. For row 38, we are going to work half double crochets until we reach our stitch marker. You should have a total of 18 stitches. Chain 1 and turn your work. For row 39, we are going to work half double crochets for the rest of this row. Continue working rows of half double crochet until you have a total of 42 rows. This is what it looks like when my rows are complete. And now I'm going to chain 1 and cut my yarn. Let's repeat the same thing on our other shoulder. So place your stitch marker into the 18th stitch or whatever measurement your shoulder is. Grab your yarn and make a slip knot. Do not put your hook into your loop just yet. Insert your hook into the stitch with the stitch marker. Put your slip knot on your hook. You're going to pull that loop through that stitch. And now we're going to yarn over and place a half double crochet inside that same stitch. Remove the stitch marker and place it into that first stitch. The stitch marker is here to help you not confuse your slip knot with your stitch. And now you're going to repeat exactly what you did on the other side. Continue working rows of half double crochet until you have a total of 42 rows. We have just completed our back panel. We're going to get started on our front panels. You need to know the width, length, and shoulder measurements. Keep in mind you are making 2 front panels. When making the front panels, we're going to use our back panels as a guide. As you see, the shoulders are the same and the length is the same. The only difference is the bottom width is going to be half of whatever the back width is, and we are going to be decreasing. We are going to begin with the ribbon, which is the bottom portion of this front panel. If you are following along with your own measurements, the width of the front panel is half of whatever the width of your back panel is. Grab your yarn and make a slip knot. We are going to chain a total of 7 chains. This is the height of our ribbon. Remember, we are working in the back bumps today, so flip your work over to the back. Place a single crochet into the second bump from the hook. We are going to continue working single crochets in the back bumps for the rest of this row. This is what it looks like when row 1 is complete. When you are finished with row 1, you are going to chain 1 and turn your work. For row 2, we are going to work single crochet back loops only for the rest of this row. This is what row 2 looks like when it's complete. You are going to continue working rows of single crochet back loops only for a total of 29 rows. This is roughly around 9 inches. This is the width of your front panel. I have completed the width of my ribbon and this is what it looked like. And now we're going to start working on the length. You're going to place half double crochets at the top of each row in the ribbon. You should have a total of 29 half double crochets when you are finished with this row. I've made it to the end of my row. Make sure that you are chaining 1 in between your rows. I'm going to grab my stitch marker and place it to the side of the row that I just did. This helps when you are counting your rows. The stitch marker counts as row 1. For row 2, we're going to work half double crochet for the rest of this row. This is what it looks like when the second row is complete. Continue to work rows of half double crochet until you have a total of 23 rows. This is roughly around 10 inches. This is the height before the decrease. This is what it looks like when my 23 rows are complete. If you are following your own measurements, I put a chart together to help you figure out how many rows you need to decrease. The number of stitches in your width minus the number of stitches in your shoulder equals the number of rows to decrease. As you see from my example, I'm going to be decreasing a total of 11 rows. For row 24, you're going to work half double crochets until you have 2 stitches left. We will be decreasing in those last 2 stitches. I have made it to my last 2 stitches and now we're going to decrease. Yarn over. Insert your hook inside that next stitch. Then you're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. You should have 3 loops on your hook. And now you're going to yarn over and insert your hook inside that last stitch. And then you're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. You should have a total of 5 loops on your hook. And now you're going to yarn over and pull up a loop through all 5 of those loops. And then you're going to chain 1. And that is how you decrease. You should have a total of 28 stitches. For row 25, you're going to be skipping that very first stitch. And you're going to be placing a half double crochet inside the second stitch. And then you're going to continue to work half double crochets for the rest of this row. You should have a total of 27 stitches. For row 26, you are going to repeat row 24. You're going to work half double crochet until you have 2 stitches left, and we are going to be decreasing in those last 2 stitches. I have made it to my last 2 stitches. Just a small tip that this part right here is not a stitch. This is the chain 1 from your previous row. Do not confuse that as a stitch. Yarn over, insert your hook inside that next stitch. Yarn over, pull up a loop, 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, insert your hook inside that next stitch, which is the last stitch. Yarn over, pull up a loop. You should have 5 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all 5 of those loops. Chain 1. You should have a total of 26 stitches. As you see, the decreases are creating a nice little slope. Continue to repeat rows 24 and 25 until you have a total of 34 rows. You should have a total of 18 half double crochets. If you are following your own measurements, you will continue to decrease rows until you have your shoulder measurement. Both rows 24 and 25 are time stamped at the bottom. I have completed all my rows of decrease, and at the top my width is 5.5, which is the width of my shoulders. And now from this point on, I'm going to continue working rows of half double crochet until I have a total of 42 rows. You will not be increasing or decreasing. You are just working regular rows of half double crochets. And now I'm going to chain 1 and cut the end of my yarn. I have completed my second panel off camera, and this is what it looks like when both front panels are complete. Last up is the arm panels. We are going to be making 2. You need to know the wrist, length, and armhole measurements. Grab your yarn and make a slip knot. We are going to chain a total of 7 chains. This is the height of our ribbon. Remember, we are working in the back bumps today, so flip your work over to the back. Place a single crochet into the second bump from the hook. We are going to continue working single crochets in the back bumps for the rest of this row. For row 2, we are going to work single crochet back loops only for the rest of this row. Continue working rows of single crochet back loops only until you have a total of 28 rows. This is the measurement of my wrist, which is 8 inches. If you are following your own measurements, continue working rows until the ribbon is long enough to wrap around your wrist. My ribbon is complete. And now we're going to place half double crochets at the top of each row inside this ribbon. We will be increasing inside the last row of this ribbon. We're going to place 2 half double crochets inside this last row. This is my first one. Now I'm going to place my second one inside that same hole. And this is how you increase at the end of your row. You should have a total of 29 half double crochets. For row 2, we are going to work half double crochets until we reach our last stitch, and inside that last stitch we are going to increase. I've made it to my very last stitch, and now I'm going to place 2 half double crochets inside this one stitch. That's my first half double crochet, and this is my second half double crochet inside the same stitch. As you see, I have 2 stitches inside one stitch, and that is how you increase at the end of your row. Grab your stitch marker to mark your first row. Repeat row 2 until you reach row 16. You should have a total of 44 half double crochets. If you are following your own measurements, continue to repeat row 2 until you have the width of your armhole. This is what it looks like when I make it to row 16. Now that we have our wrist and armhole measurements, we are going to start working on the length of our panel. For row 17, half double crochet for the rest of the row. This is a regular row of half double crochets, no increases. You are going to continue working rows of half double crochet until you reach row 55. This is roughly around 22.5 inches. This is the length of my arm measurement. If you are following your own measurements, continue to work rows of half double crochet until you have the length of your arm measurements. I have completed my 55 rows, and this is what it looks like when your arm panel is complete. Remember, you are making 2 arm panels. I'm going to grab my needle and I'm going to weave in my ends. The goal is to stick your needle inside the rows and hide it in between the stitches. I'm going to weave in the strings for the rest of my other panels off camera. Grab your arm panel and fold it in half. The part of the panel that opens should be at the top. Grab your yarn and make a slip knot. We are going to be using slip stitches to close our panel. Make sure you have a long enough tail to weave in at the end. Insert your hook inside the first stitch in the ribbon. And you're going to do the same thing to the ribbon in the back. Bring your yarn around to the back. Yarn over, pull up a loop through both of the stitches. You should have 2 loops on your hook. Pull that first loop through the last loop, and that is how you slip stitch. Inside the next stitch, insert your hook. Insert your hook inside the next stitch in the back. Yarn over, pull up a loop through both of those stitches. 2 loops on your hook, pull the first loop through the last loop. Inside the next stitch in the front, insert your hook. Inside the next stitch in the back, insert your hook. Yarn over, pull up a loop through both of those stitches. Two loops on your hook, pull the first loop through the last loop. When you make it to the part of the panel that is no longer the ribbon, you're going to stick your hook at the top of any space that you can and continue working slip stitches. Do not have a tight tension when you are working your slip stitches. When you are finished, chain 1 and cut your yarn. I weaved in my ends, and this is what it looked like when both arm panels are complete. Let's get started on attaching our panels to complete our cardigan. Lay both of your front panels down on top of the back panel and make sure that the shoulders are lined up with one another. Grab your yarn and make a slip knot. Make sure you have a long enough tail to weave in at the end. We are going to use slip stitches to attach the shoulders. Insert your hook inside the first stitch in the front panel and insert your hook inside the first stitch in the back panel. Pull your yarn to the back. And now you're going to yarn over and pull up a loop through both stitches. You should have 2 loops on your hook. Pull the first loop through the last loop, and that is how you slip stitch. You are going to continue working slip stitches for the rest of this row. When you are finished, you're going to chain 1 and cut your yarn. I'm going to weave in these 2 strings off camera. You are going to repeat the same thing to the other shoulder, but this time you will be inserting your hook on the right side where the arrows is pointing. Grab your arm panel, make sure the part that curves is at the bottom, and now we're going to slide it to the right and attach it to the shoulder. Grab your stitch marker. We're going to insert it at the top of the arm panel and connect it to the top of the other panel. We are going to do the same thing to the bottom. Insert your marker at the bottom of the arm panel and attach it right across to the other panel. Grab your yarn and make a slip knot. We are going to slip stitch these panels together. Inside the front panel, the first stitch, we're going to insert our hook. Inside the back panel in the first stitch, insert your hook. We're going to place a slip stitch, so yarn over, pull up a loop through both of these stitches. You should have 2 loops on your hook. Pull the first loop through the last loop. You're going to continue to work slip stitches all the way down until you reach that first stitch marker. Try not to have a tight tension when you are placing these slip stitches. Now that we made it to the stitch marker, I'm going to turn the work to make it easier for you guys to see. We are going to continue working slip stitches, but this time we are slip stitching into the arm panel. So you're going to continue to slip stitch into the arm panel all the way till you reach the top, and continue to slip stitch on the other side until the whole arm panel is connected. As you see, I still have a little hole left, so I'm going to continue to slip stitch until that hole is completely closed. Once I finish closing that hole, I'm going to chain 1 and cut my yarn. And then that string that is left, I'm going to weave it in so I don't have to worry about it later. Now that our right side is complete, we're going to flip our work over and repeat everything that we just did on this side. Don't forget to connect your panels with your stitch marker. If you need to rewatch the other side, it will be time-stamped at the bottom. Last up is the outer ribbon and adding the buttons. By this point, all the pieces should be attached and all the strings should be weaved in. And now we're going to take our cardigan and flip it inside out. We are going to start our ribbon in the bottom left-hand corner. Grab your yarn and make a slip knot. Insert your hook inside that very first stitch in the ribbon. We are going to place a slip stitch and chain a total of 7 chains. Inside the second chain from the hook, we are going to place a single crochet, and we are going to continue to single crochet for a total of 6 stitches. This is what it looks like when row 1 is complete. Grab your stitch marker and place it into the 6th stitch. Inside the next stitch, we are going to place a slip stitch, and we're going to slip stitch inside the next stitch as well. and then we're going to turn our work. For row 2, you're going to remove that stitch marker and place a back loop only single crochet into that stitch. Place the stitch marker back into the stitch and continue working single crochet back loops only for the rest of the row. You should have a total of 6. You are going to chain 1 and turn your work. For row 3, you're going to repeat row 1. You're going to work single crochet back loop only all the way until you reach that stitch marker. Don't forget to place your stitch marker back into that last stitch. Slip stitch inside the next 2 stitches and turn your work. For row 4, you're going to repeat row 2, which is time stamped at the bottom. I will meet you back at row 5 to show you how to work your buttonhole. You will need your buttons for row 5. You are going to work single crochet back loops only inside the first 2 stitches. And then you are going to chain 2 chains, skip 2 stitches, and place single crochet back loops only inside the last 2 stitches. And then you're going to continue the row as normal. And as you see, we have created a hole, and now I'm going to grab my button to make sure that this button fit through that hole. The number of stitches you skip determine how big your buttonhole is. So if you have a big button, you're going to skip more stitches, and if you have a smaller button, you're going to skip less stitches. Repeat rows 2 and 3 until your ribbon wrap all the way around your cardigan. Only work buttonholes on one side of the ribbon. The amount of holes you make is up to you. Rows 2 and 3 and the buttonholes are time stamped at the bottom. I'm going to weave in these 2 strings at the bottom. We are going to sew on our buttons. You're going to need a small strand of yarn and your needle. I currently can't find my needle right now, so I'm using this thing right here. You're going to match your holes up with the button. So my first hole is in the 5th row, so I'm going to place my button in the 5th row as well. And now I'm going to check to make sure that it closes properly. I'm going to repeat the same process for my other buttons. Here is a close-up of the finished ribbon with the buttons. And you have completed your crochet button-down cardigan. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe to support this channel, and leave any questions you have in the comments.